Have you heard about the stories that run wild in Canada? I'm not talking about children's tales, but urban legends that make even the most skeptical think twice before going out at night. Let me tell you about some of the worst I've heard. Imagine being near an isolated bridge and starting to hear a girl's voice singing, "Happy birthday." It's the birthday girl, a poor soul found dead there, and to this day, her spirit does not rest. Or think about the ghost train, a train that still runs on abandoned tracks, with a sound so real that it has made many people swear they've seen the impossible. And if you've ever been to a party and noticed someone who seemed out of place, beware. There are stories of a mysterious man who appears out of nowhere, dances with you, and before you realize it, the night ends in a sinister way. These stories are not just to scare. They have deep roots in the real fear of things we cannot explain. So if you enjoy a good horror story and want to know what really scares people around here, you're in the right place. Canada may be beautiful, but when the sun sets, the legends come to life. So put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and wrap yourself up in your blanket. Let's get started. Subterranean humanoid creature. A young boy accidentally discovered the entrance to an unknown tunnel. Driven by the curiosity that often captivates young minds, he ventured into the dark underground labyrinth, the faint light of his flashlight barely illuminating the damp, moss-covered walls. As he went deeper, the air grew colder, and a growing sense of fear began to set in. Without warning, from the dark gaps ahead, an ominous figure emerged, almost merging with the shadows. The creature was of imposing stature, with pale, wrinkled skin hanging from its bones like old cloth. Its eyes, sunken and glowing, fixed on the boy with an intense, terrifying stare. The voice that emanated was a hoarse whisper. "Run away from here. Do not disturb the silence of this place." Years earlier, in the 1970s, a fearless man also encountered this horrifying apparition. While exploring the same tunnel, he heard murmurs that turned into agonizing screams of warning. The entity he encountered was not just a fleeting vision. It had an air of antiquity, as if it were a guardian of secrets buried for centuries. The man, though terrified, shared his story, which became a classic local horror tale. Later, access to the tunnel was inexplicably sealed, as if to preserve or contain the threat beneath. In the area, people began to avoid that place, exchanging terrifying stories about the underground entity. The elders of the community said it was a restless spirit, cursed to guard the tunnel against intruders. The legend suggested that the creature was responsible for the disappearance of curious people who ignored warnings and ventured beyond the safe zone. For those who find themselves near this forgotten entrance, the advice is always the same. Not only avoid exploring the depths, but also keep a respectful distance. Carrying a symbol of protection or simply choosing not to pass by after dark are common practices among locals. This echo of stories and warnings forms a veil of mystery and terror that hangs over the community. The legend of the subterranean creature remains alive, fueling the popular imagination and attracting both residents and daring visitors. However, prudence and respect for forces beyond our understanding remain the best way to face the unknown. The ghost of the birthday girl. In a small Canadian town, the tragic story of a girl abducted during her birthday party circulates with a somber and melancholic tone. She was found lifeless near an old bridge, and since then, a peculiar ritual has continued among local residents. It is said that singing "Happy Birthday" at that spot can evoke the girl's spirit. What was once just a story told to scare children took on new dimensions when inexplicable events began to occur, leaving a trail of genuine fear in the community. The bridge, now known as the Birthday Girls Bridge, attracts curious people and urban legend hunters, all eager for a glimpse of the paranormal. On the night of the tragedy's anniversary, groups gather, singing under the moonlight. They keep their eyes fixed on the shadows dancing on the water. Sightings of apparitions have become more common, with many describing a small, pale figure in a stained, faded dress, silently watching from the opposite bank before vanishing into the mist. Some visitors report feeling an inexplicable chill down their spine, while others speak of an overwhelming sadness that envelops them without warning, an intense feeling that forces them to leave the area immediately. Among these accounts, one stands out for its intensity. A woman who visited the bridge seeking closure for a personal loss recounted hearing the muffled crying of a child just after the song ended. At first, she thought it was a cruel joke, but when she looked around and saw no one, a cold fear gripped her. As she turned to leave, she felt a slight tug on her coat, as if a small hand had grasped the fabric. She described the experience as deeply terrifying, a mix of terror and compassion. According to her, the girl's empty eyes seemed to beg for something life had denied her, perhaps comfort, perhaps justice. For those who decide to visit the bridge, respect and caution are advised. It is not just a matter of personal safety, but also a way to honor the memory of one who lost her life so tragically. Lighting a candle or leaving a toy may be seen as a gesture of kindness, a small tribute to appease the lonely spirit. However, some say that the spirit seeks not only comfort, but also permanent company. A recent legend says that in some cases, those who visit the bridge and sing the song may take something back with them, a fragment of the girl's sadness that settles in their lives, leading to sleepless nights and a growing sense of despair. This place, shrouded in mystery and sorrow, serves as a constant reminder of the untold stories that lie in the shadows of our cities. While some seek terror and thrill, others seek answers or even a chance to feel. But all who venture there are confronted with an unsettling truth. The line between the living and the dead is thinner than we imagine. The bridge and its tragic legend remain as powerful symbols of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. And those who dare to cross it may not come back the same. The ghost train. In a remote village, the railway line was decommissioned after a serious accident that deeply affected the community. Even though no trains officially run anymore, stories of a ghost train continue to circulate among the local residents. According to these tales, on foggy nights, it is possible to hear the sound of a train whistle and the tracks vibrating, as if an invisible locomotive still traveled that route. Some say that the fog seems to form more densely along the old railway, as if drawn by an invisible force, hiding within its folds the specter of a long-forgotten tragedy. The incident that gave rise to these stories involved a railroad worker who lost his head, literally, in an accident that was not well explained. Witnesses at the time said he was performing routine maintenance, when, without warning, the locomotive that shouldn't have been there appeared like a ghost of iron and steel, brutally taking his life. Since then, it is believed that he is the one who drives the ghost train, a lost soul trying to complete his last journey. People speak of a faint light appearing in the distance, growing in intensity as it approaches, only to disappear in a cold breath, leaving only the echo of a mournful whistle and the feeling that something or someone was there. Visitors and local residents who seek to experience this phenomenon gather near the old tracks, especially during the cold autumn nights when the fog makes the atmosphere even more conducive to apparitions. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they hope to capture some sign of the train that, according to the true account, never fails to make its ghostly appearance. But many return with more than they expected. Stories of clocks that stop exactly when the train is heard, flashlights that fail without explanation, and the icy sensation of being watched by invisible eyes coming from the shadows of the fog. Some claim to have seen for a fraction of a second the shadowy figure of the railroad worker, with his uniform stained with grease and blood, his empty gaze and lost expression, as if trapped in an eternal loop of despair and confusion. For those who decide to explore this macabre attraction, it is recommended not to go alone. Moreover, being prepared for the unexpected is crucial, as fear can be as real as the legend. Having an escape plan, or at least an idea of how to quickly return to your car, might be a good strategy, as there are many cases of visitors who feel disoriented or terrifyingly lost. The fog seems to distort not only sound, but also the perception of space, making the tracks appear to stretch endlessly, while inaudible whispers float in the air as if the place itself were conspiring. This place, with its history of terror and loss, serves as a chilling reminder of the power of past events to shape not only the environment, but also the legends that define a community. The ghost train, with its nighttime whistles and shivers, continues to be a source of fascination and fear, attracting both the brave and those who seek to understand the mysteries hidden in the night. But the real question that remains is, what happens when the train stops? The legend suggests that those who hear the train and do not see it are safe, but those who actually see it risk being taken on a journey with no return, dragged to the same tragic fate as the unlucky engineer. So the train continues its ghostly march, carrying with it the echoes of a tragedy that, for the brave, can become much more than just a story. The Woman of the Waterfall. In the dense forest surrounding the small village, a waterfall hides the tragic story of Matilda, a young woman whose fiancé died in combat. Inconsolable and consumed by grief, Matilda threw herself from the heights of the waterfall, a place she and her beloved used to frequent. Since then, it is said that her spirit haunts the place, with her veil still visible among the rocks, symbolizing her trapped soul, eternally waiting. Over the years, Matilda's legend has become more than just a simple story. It has become a dark warning about the dangers of lost love and the despair it can bring. Visitors to the site often report seeing a white veil caught in the rocks, moving gently with the wind, almost as if it were alive. Sometimes the veil seems to float over the waters, disappearing the moment someone tries to approach. The waterfall, with its constant roar, seems to take on a different quality in those moments, a kind of deep lament, as if the waters themselves were mourning the lost soul. Some say they hear sad whispers and melodies of lost love, especially on days when the sky is overcast and the surrounding area seems consumed by melancholy. The more sensitive to the paranormal describe a cold and heavy presence, making the temperature drop suddenly, as if Matilda herself were passing by them, her spirit still trapped in the place where life slipped away. Matilda's legend has become one of the most touching horror stories in the region. The waterfall, now known as the Bride's Waterfall, attracts both lovers of the supernatural and broken hearts. They come to offer flowers and small gifts in the hope of appeasing Matilda's spirit and perhaps finding comfort for their own losses. Many report that the gifts left behind mysteriously disappear or are found floating in the waterfall's waters, as if Matilda had accepted them, but then returned them, unable to find peace. Some, however, swear they have seen the figure of a woman dressed in white with empty, sad eyes, silently watching those who approach, as if evaluating their intentions. For those who venture to the waterfall, it is advisable to maintain a respectful reverence for the place. Some people choose to sit in silence, watching the waters and meditating on the stories of love and loss. However, the more cautious suggest never turning your back on the waterfall. There are reports of people who felt a presence behind them, as if Matilde were desperately trying to reach them, her spirit pleading for company in her eternal loneliness. Those who have been touched by this presence speak of a penetrating cold, a feeling of overwhelming sadness that lingers for days, as if a part of Matilda's pain had been transferred to them. This place, marked by natural beauty and the echo of a tragic love, serves not only as a setting for urban legends, but as a sanctuary for those who seek to understand the thin line between love, death, and the beyond. Matilde's story, wrapped in love and tragedy, continues to inspire and terrify those who hear her melancholic call through the murmur of the waters. For believers, the waterfall is more than a place of beauty. It is a portal to eternal suffering, a reminder that love can persist beyond death, but sometimes with terrifying consequences. Thus, the Bride's Waterfall remains a meeting point between the world of the living and the dead, where those who dare to listen can hear not only the waterfall, but also the sigh of a heart that never stopped crying. The mysterious man at the party. At a lively party in an old house in the city, a young woman met an enigmatically charming man. With a captivating smile and seductive words, he invited her to dance. The music seemed to revolve around them, and as they danced, the surroundings disappeared, leaving them in a world apart, where the candlelight flickered as if trapped in a forgotten time. As the night wore on, the woman began to notice subtle peculiarities in her companion. His touch was unusually cold, as if all life had withdrawn from his hands, and his eyes, which had once shone with a hypnotic light, occasionally reflected a sinister glow, as if hiding an inner fire. The shadows in the room seemed to lengthen and twist, as if reacting to his presence. Still, ignoring the signs, she allowed herself to be swept away by the experience, enchanted by his magnetic presence. Each dance step drew her deeper into a trance from which there seemed to be no escape. When the music stopped, he whispered an invitation to a secluded spot outside the party, promising a continuation of the night that would be unforgettable. His voice sounded sweet and threatening at the same time, like a melody that promises eternal happiness but hides a deadly curse. Charmed and unaware of the imminent danger, she accepted, not knowing that this would be her biggest mistake. As they moved away from the safety of the other guests, the atmosphere changed, and the charm gave way to a dense, threatening atmosphere. The moon, once bright, was obscured by thick clouds, plunging the world into deep darkness. When they reached a clearing in the forest, the man revealed his true nature. He was not human, but a demon in disguise. His form began to distort, the once beautiful, seductive face transforming into something horrendous, with eyes burning like embers, and a smile that now revealed rows of sharp teeth. That night, she found herself involved in a sinister ritual, marked by arcane symbols that would seal her tragic fate. The sound of the trees rustling in the wind seemed to transform into grotesque laughter, and the ground beneath her feet trembled as if the very earth recognized the evil being invoked. Her body was found days later in the same forest, with a gaze frozen in terror and enigmatic markings etched into her pale skin. Like a macabre message left by forces that few dare to name. The incident quickly gave rise to one of the most disturbing urban legends in the region. The story of this woman serves as a dark warning about the dangers of following strangers and the weight of choices made in the innocence of youth. For those who hear this tale of terror, it is a frightening reminder that not all appearances can be trusted, especially when the supernatural lurks in the shadows. Local residents still talk about similar encounters at old parties, where a mysterious man invites unsuspecting young women to dance. They say that on full moon nights, you can hear laughter and the melody of an old song coming from the forest, a distant echo of the tragedy that still haunts the place. And for the superstitious, the lesson is clear. When a charming stranger appears out of nowhere and offers an irresistible invitation, it might be best to decline and walk away. Because amidst the charm and mystery, there may be a demon lurking, ready to claim another unsuspecting soul. The snowman in rural Canada, where winter is relentless and snow piles up in mounds that can easily swallow a house. There is a story that the locals know well but avoid discussing. It's the story of the snowman. We're not talking about a mythical creature or an ancient monster legend, but something much more real. And perhaps for that reason, even more terrifying. The legend tells that in the mid-20th century, a group of workers was caught in a snowstorm that came without warning, isolating a small community for weeks. Authorities couldn't reach them, and food quickly began to run out. Desperation set in, and with it, madness. One of the men, known for being solitary and having an unpredictable temper, mysteriously disappeared one night. Days later, the survivors began hearing knocks on the walls of their cabins, always at night, accompanied by a dragging sound, as if someone was walking through the snow but leaving no tracks. The knocks were slow, deliberate, and increasingly close, as if something or someone was approaching with cruel patience. The residents, initially skeptical, began locking their doors and windows, but the sounds persisted. Then, one of the men disappeared without a trace, and shortly after another. The snow around the cabin seemed to move on its own, as if something was lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. Tracks were found in the snow, not footprints, but strange undulations in the white mantle, as if something were crawling beneath the surface. The knocking continued, and those who remained in panic began to notice that the snow seemed to have a life of its own. It slowly advanced, surrounding them, as if they were about to be swallowed by the very earth. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found the cabins empty, but with no signs of struggle or footprints in the snow. Only a message was left in the snow in front of one of the doors. "He took us." The rescuers, terrified, abandoned the place without trying to understand what had really happened. Since then, on harsh winter nights, when the wind blows strong and the snow seems to whisper forgotten secrets, the locals avoid going out after dark. They say the snowman is still out there, wandering in the dark, looking for those who venture alone into the deep winter. It's not a story of monsters or ghosts, but something worse, an invisible presence, a malevolent force that no one can see, that walks silently through the snow, and that always takes those who aren't careful. The elders in the region speak of an unusual cold that precedes the appearance of the snowman, a cold that cannot be explained by winter, a cold that seems to arise from within, from fear itself. And you, would you have the courage to face a lonely night in the rural areas of Canada? If you hear knocking on your door during a snowstorm, think twice before opening it. Maybe it's better to pretend you didn't hear anything, and hope that the snowman moves on in search of another, less cautious victim. The mysterious caveman. There is a forgotten road on the outskirts of a small Canadian town, where the trees are so dense that even sunlight seems afraid to enter. The locals avoid passing by there at night, and not without reason. The road leads to a cave that everyone knows, but few dare to mention. It is the home of the caveman, a figure who has terrorized the region for decades, plunging it into a heavy silence every time his name is mentioned. The legend begins in the 1950s when a group of young people decided to explore the cave one summer night. They never returned. The next day, their bicycles were found abandoned at the entrance, and inside the cave, only marks of struggle and blood were scattered on the walls. The dirt floor was disturbed, as if something or someone had been dragged into the depths. The search yielded nothing, and the cave was sealed, hoping to bury whatever was inside. But the tranquility the locals hoped for never came. The story, however, doesn't end there. Residents began reporting strange sounds coming from the direction of the cave, even with the entrance sealed. At night, muffled screams were heard, as if someone were trapped inside, crying for help with a voice that wavered between human and something unspeakable. The most terrifying, however, were the disappearances that continued to occur. Always near that road, always people who ventured too close to the cave. No matter how much they tried to avoid, the place, curiosity, or bad luck ended up attracting new victims. They say that the caveman is not an ordinary man. The oldest stories speak of a miner who went mad after being trapped in the cave during a landslide. He survived by eating his own companions, and when he was finally rescued, he was no longer human. His eyes, once full of hope, had become empty, reflecting only the void of the cave and the darkness in his heart. He disappeared from the town shortly after, but the cave never let him go. Now he is a shadow, a presence that hunts those who get too close to his territory. And it seems his hunger never went away. The few who survived an encounter with the caveman speak of a tall, skeletal figure, with eyes that glow in the dark and heavy breathing that echoes throughout the cave. Like a cursed wind that runs through its forgotten galleries. They say he only reveals himself when you are completely alone, when the silence around you is so deep that you begin to doubt your own sanity. The air grows cold, and the walls seem to close in on you, as if the cave were alive and conspiring with its macabre guardian. And then, before you realize it, he's there, just a few steps away. With a hungry look that seems to pierce your soul, the locals advise, if you pass by that road at night and hear something strange, don't stop. Don't look back. Speed up and get out of there as fast as you can. Because if the caveman senses your presence, he will follow you with terrifying patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maybe he won't do it immediately. Maybe he likes to play with his victims, leaving a trail of terrifying clues that only you can perceive. But one thing is certain. If he finds you, you may never see the light of day again. Even so, the cave remains, a grim reminder of the stories people prefer to forget. It hides in the shadows of the forest, waiting for those foolish or curious enough to challenge its depths. But for those who know the story, the cave is not just a hole in the rock. It's an open grave, an entrance to terror that few have survived to tell. And those who disappeared continue to wander its dark corridors, condemned to never find peace, just like the caveman, who watches them with eyes that have seen death and wished for something worse. Now, ask yourself, would you have the courage to take that road? Would you know how to distinguish between legend and reality when you're alone in the dark? And if you think these Canadian legends are chilling, wait until you hear the stories from the other side of the world. I'll leave you a card with 5 urban legends from Japan that will make you question every noise in the night, every shadow that seems to move on its own. See you there, okay? Stay with me.